Hello out there, you wonderful people. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy. Thank you once again for lending me your time and your ear listening into another 3DS Game Ideas video from me. And this time I'm going to be talking about something a little bit less usual for this series, and that's a fighting game. I mean, I've done it a couple times when I talked about Marvel vs. Capcom collection and all that. But this is one I know that not a whole lot of people have really put a lot of time into, even though, yes, those of us who are more into fighting games and deeper into the fighting game scene have probably played these games, and that's the Fatal Fury Real Bout collection. Basically, Fatal Fury Real Bout or Real Bout Fatal Fury, depending on your localization. I think it bounces either way. The Real Bout series basically takes place after the first series of Fatal Fury games, which is 1, 2, and 3, obviously, and 3 being Road to Victory, which plays very similarly to the Real Bout games. Actually, their playstyle is based off of that one. I think I would like to. I personally, I would like to see the collection happen. But like, you get Fatal Fury Real Bout, and then you get Fatal Fury Real Bout Special, and then Fatal Fury Real Bout 2. Or is it real? And see, the problem is I've heard it both ways so many times, and they both sound right, even though I know one of them is wrong. It's either Real Bout Fatal Fury or Fatal Fury Real Bout. I think it's Real Bout Fatal Fury. I think that's actually the correct way it's supposed to go. But either way, for me, I'd like to see those games get more appreciation. There are characters in them that honestly haven't really showed up in very many other SNK games at all. Like, a lot of them I feel would fit perfectly into the King of Fighters series, like Bob Wilson, the twins that I can't remember their names right now. One wears red, one wears blue. Then there's the dude that has the monk that has the half demon face. Like, so many characters that are in this series that would just easily transition right into King of Fighters, because obviously they're SNK characters, and SNK knows how to take their fighters from one play style to another one that they've created. I would personally love to see this happen. And like, plus when I look at it, like thinking about games like Real Bout Fatal Fury Special, where you have, and I'm going to put this out there right now, I don't want the arcade versions of these games in this collection. No, not the arcade versions, the console versions, the home versions of these games. That way you actually get more content out of the games, and it's more worth the money. That said, in Real Bout Fatal Fury Special, I don't think Real Bout Fatal Fury 2 actually had a home console version, unless it was just exclusive to Neo Geo, but I don't want to get sidetracked. With Real Bout Fatal Fury Special, you have your arcade mode, your versus mode, obviously, your practice mode and all that, but there's also an original mode, which actually I think original mode more or less simulates playing in an arcade, like where you can play, where you're actually taking on all of the characters, but the better you do, every now and again you get interrupted by these supposed other people that aren't actually in the game, but you get like a picture and they'll say something, and they pick a character to fight you with them. Like, when they pick a character, it goes back to the character select screen, and you watch them, like you're looking at them decide who they want to play with. Obviously, it's still a computer, and I think this is the precursor to the ranking system that happened in Virtua Fighter and Tekken, where you had the Dan and the Q and all that stuff. Like, I think this was the precursor to that, where you did well enough. Like, I think it's like every 4 or 5 matches, you ended up fighting like a different. Like, you ended up taking on another person, supposedly. Again, I think it's supposed to be simulating playing in an arcade. Like, when this happens, you could fight against a character you've already beaten. Like, you could have like squashed this character the first time around, and then come back and face this player character, and the player character might actually play a little bit differently than the CPU character, like the strictly CPU character. I mean, like, to me, that's actually a pretty awesome concept, and I would like to see that happen. Real Bout Fatal Fury, the first one, as far as this collection would go, not online. It's just it's just local play, where either you have 2 3DSs or you're playing single player. No online for that one. Real Bout Fatal Fury Special and Real Bout Fatal Fury 2 should both actually have online modes. Or if they don't want to do all of that and give you all of those games where you can play them again locally with another 3DS and just do download play, and then the online mode would have a selection of all of the characters, like all of their versions from Real Bout to Real Bout 2. And then, like, that actually, I think, would be a little bit more interesting, because then you could play your previous version of Terry versus the later version of Terry, and then, like, that, it could be interesting. I think Capcom did that once with Street Fighter at one point. I forget which collection it was, but I think they did it with one of the Street Fighter 2 collections that they had, where you had all of the different versions of the Street Fighter, all of the versions of Street Fighter 2 characters available to play as from the character select screen, and they all had their own separate slots or whatever. Like something like that could actually work for online mode. That way, when you play, it's not like the basic controls of the games change a whole lot, because they really stay the same. But some of the characters' attacks and moves might operate a little bit differently. Like Terry, for instance, with his power geyser, in Real Bout Fatal Fury, it spikes straight up across the ground. Whereas in Real Bout Fatal Fury Special, it has like a sideways arc to it when he hits the ground. And that changes up the hitboxes as well as how the damage is distributed. So there's a lot of opportunities to see where these different versions of characters could clash and how interesting it could be. So, I mean, for me personally, that's just my thought process. That's not everybody's cup of tea, but for me, something like that, I would love to play Real Bout Fatal Fury Terry against a really good Real Bout Special Terry, and me playing it back and forth. Or even have a watch mode in separate of that, where you have all those versions of the characters available, and just be able to go back and forth with them. That way you can set up matchups and see how they play out. Again, just the geeky side of me would be interested in that. I mean, that's not something that everybody would want, but me, I would enjoy it, because it would be cool to me. Trying to think. Because you'd have all of your stuff going on the top screen. And I think the only thing I would want to say is, when you're playing any of the Real Bout games in single player mode, whoever your opponent is, their face will be displayed on the bottom screen of the 3DS. A portrait of them will be displayed on the bottom of the 3DS, and while you're fighting them, in between stuff, during cutscenes and intermissions and stuff, the character you're playing as will be displayed at the bottom. It's a simple touch. It doesn't do a whole lot, but it makes use of that screen. And that's really all. That's really all it needs, because you're really more or less focused on the gameplay being there and available. The only other thing I would say is that sometimes, and this is just personal experience playing the Real Bout games, sometimes the moves can get stuck. And it happens often. I'm not even gonna lie, it happens quite often. At least when I was playing originally, and even in the gameplay, you might see sometimes it looks like I'm doing a move and then nothing happens. There's a stiffness to the game that could be slightly fixed. It's not a big deal, because it doesn't really hurt the game, but if that was just slightly tweaked, it can make the game a little bit faster paced and a little bit more fluid. But that's it. That's really it. I unfortunately have no experience with Real Bout Fatal Fury 2, so I can't really comment much on that game. I would love to play it, but I have not. So, and putting out a collection like this with it available would be awesome. That would be really cool. At least to me. So. I think I've run the gambit, though, with this particular game and everything. So I'm going to close this one out. Thank you guys very much for listening in. Keep your eyes and ears up for more stuff from me. And until the next time, enjoy your games. And if you're interested, my Discord server link is in the description below. Peace out.